Ngozi returned from running errands and met her daughter crying outside the gatehouse. "Mommy, Auntie Ozioma locked me in the doghouse and forced me to bark like a dog." Once upon a time, in the busy city of Oka, lived a woman whose name was Ngozi. Ngozi was not just any woman. She was an extremely wealthy woman who married a multi-billionaire. A woman who single-handedly built a mansion for her best friend and sponsored the luxury lifestyle that her friend lived. Ngozi was a force to reckon with. Her husband treated her like a queen, and everyone in Oka envied the kind of love that they shared. A love that made her husband trust her to the extent of making her a co-signatory to all of his accounts. Ngozi was indeed a lucky woman. Her best friend Ozioma was so supportive and kind. Whenever Ngozi needed her, she was there, and Ngozi could not help but show her appreciation to her. She built her a house and even got her a car that cost millions. Ngozi could not fathom why her best friend would live in a dilapidated house when she, Ngozi, had the money to transform her life. She was of the opinion that wealth meant nothing if the people you loved were still suffering, so Ngozi carried Ozioma along everywhere. If Ngozi traveled, Ozioma traveled as well. If she shopped, Ozioma also had a bag full of items with her favorite things. People even thought that they were sisters, considering the fact that they even looked so much alike. However, Ngozi had an only sister who cut her off so many years ago. Her name was Buchi, and she ran a small restaurant in town. All efforts by Ngozi to help her sister scale her business ended in futility as Buchi refused every form of help from her, claiming that she wanted nothing to do with her sister. "Keep your money, you pretender. You think I don't know what all this is about?" she said to Ngozi, who did everything within her power to make her sister tell her what the problem was, but Buchi was not willing to spill. She distanced herself from Ngozi, while Ngozi poured out all her love on Ozioma, treating her not only as a friend, but as a sister that she no longer had. She poured out all her love on her, paying her bills and funding her luxury lifestyle, so much so that Ozioma had no reason to work. Nkechi trusted her with all of her secrets. She told Ozioma everything, her fears, her worries, her prayers, even the things that she never told her own husband. Ozioma was now living the life. She stopped working, stopped hustling, and even stopped following her dreams. To her, she believed she had no need to ever work in her life. Why work when Ngozi's money worked for her? She thought to herself as she lived the soft life that so many women dreamed of. However, everything changed the moment that Ngozi lost everything she had. Her husband was nowhere to be found, and the accounts were frozen without warning. Everything happened overnight, leaving Ngozi and her daughter with nowhere else to stay. They arrived at Ozioma's home, hoping to get help from her, but what awaited them in that moment was far colder than ice. Ozioma, opening the door slowly, looked Ngozi up and down, then glanced at the small bag that she carried and her daughter standing next to her. For a moment, Ngozi felt a form of relief. Thank God I still have you," she whispered as Ozioma laughed. Not the laughter of sympathy, the laughter of someone who had been waiting for this moment all her life. "So it has finally happened," Ozioma said, folding her arms as she laughed at Ngozi mockingly. "The mighty has finally fallen," she said as Ngozi blinked in shock. "Ozioma, please," she said quietly. "Everything is frozen. Just for a few days. I'll sort myself out." Ozioma scoffed and stepped aside, allowing them in, not out of kindness, but out of curiosity. She led them into the living room that Ngozi had furnished with her own money. The same couch, the same rug, the same chandelier that she bought. Yet, Ozioma now sat on it like a queen who was reclaiming her throne. "Sit," she said to Ngozi, who sat there, as she began to narrate all that had happened. How her husband was nowhere to be found, and how their accounts had all been frozen by the bank following an investigation involving her husband. Their home, cars, and all the properties they owned had also been seized by the authorities pending the outcome of the investigation. As Ngozi spoke, her voice trembled, but she tried to remain strong. She explained how the police sent them out of their home, leaving her with nowhere else to go. Ngozi pleaded with her friend to allow her stay in her home for a few weeks, pending when everything is resolved, but Ozioma looked her in the eyes and revealed that it would not be convenient. However, She allowed to give them her gatehouse, which was now vacant as her gateman resigned a few days ago. Ngozi froze. She could not believe her ears. The gatehouse? She asked quietly as she stared at Oyama, who looked so unbothered as she stared back at her and began to speak. Of course the gatehouse. Or do you want to sleep on the street? She asked Ngozi, who swallowed hard, unable to believe what her friend was saying. The same woman whose mansion she built with her money. The same woman who once slept in silk sheets because of her generosity, now offering her a gatehouse. Still, pride had no place left in her heart, so she thanked Oyama and went off to the gatehouse with her little daughter. That night, Ngozi and her daughter slept on a thin mattress on the floor. The ceiling leaked. Mosquitoes sang all night as Ngozi and her daughter struggled to sleep. Ngozi laid on the bed awake, staring into the darkness as tears poured down her eyes. Morning came, and Ngozi could not believe what her friend did to her. She woke her up with a loud horn, yelling for her to come open the gate. Ngozi could not believe what her friend had turned her into, a gate woman in a home that she built with her own money, opening the gate for a car that she bought for a woman who she took as a sister. Ngozi stood there broken, her eyes swollen as she cried and pushed the heavy gate open. Oyama sat in the driver's seat, her sunglasses on, as she revved the engine, yelling angrily at Ngozi, who stood there bewildered to see her friend act in such a wicked way. As she drove off, she warned Ngozi not to allow her daughter enter the main compound. I hope you understand boundaries, she said to Ngozi, who stood there like a statue about to break into pieces. Days turned into weeks, and Ngozi became a glorified gate woman in her friend's home. She opened the gate, cleaned the compound, and even ran errands for her friend, who used her as a maid. Ngozi never knew her friend was jealous of her. For all these years, she thought she had a friend who loved her like a sister. Little did she know that Oyama was only with her for her money. In fact, Oyama had been waiting patiently for the day Ngozi would fall. All those years of smiling, all those years of calling her my sister, all those years of gratitude, they were all lies wrapped in politeness. Oyama hated the way people respected Ngozi. She hated the way her name opened doors. She hated the way men stood straighter when she walked past them. She hated the way, even in silence, Ngozi commanded honor. And now, finally, the table had turned. Each morning, Oyama found new ways to remind Ngozi of her place. Gate woman, open the gate. Gate woman, fetch water. Gate woman, why is the compound dirty? Sometimes, she would bring visitors and shout loudly on purpose, just so that they could see Ngozi rushing out with a broom or opening the gate like a servant. The same neighbors who once greeted Ngozi with respect now whispered behind her back, "Is that not the woman that used to be rich? See how life humbles people, oh." Ngozi heard all that they said. She felt every word, every gossip, every laugh thrown in her direction like stones, but Ngozi did not answer anyone. She swallowed her tears and forged on, hoping that one day her life would come back to normal. One afternoon, Ngozi returned from running errands and met her daughter crying outside the gatehouse. "Mommy, Auntie Oyama locked me in the doghouse and forced me to bark like a dog. She said I littered the compound and that I needed to learn how animals behave since we are now living like animals." Her daughter sobbed as her small body shook in terror. Ngozi's world stopped in that moment. She could not hear anything else, not the noise of the street, not the whispers of neighbors, not even her own breathing. She dropped the bag in her hands and marched straight to the main house to confront her friend Oyama, who was in the living room painting her nails. Ngozi burst into the living room, her chest rising and falling like she had run a long distance. "How dare you do that to my child?" she asked, her voice shaking, not from fear, but from a pain so deep that it had gone quiet. Oyama looked up slowly, still painting her nails, completely unbothered. "Control your voice, please," she said lazily. "You're in my house, remember?" Ngozi laughed once, a dry, hollow laughter. "Your house?" she repeated softly, as Oyama rolled her eyes. "Yes, my house, and your child needs discipline. Since you people don't know how to behave, I taught her the language that she understands." Ngozi stared at her for a very long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Ngozi did something Oyama did not expect. She smiled and walked out of the house, leaving Oyama in complete shock. Hours later, Ngozi packed all her bags and left. Ozioma did not hear from her and didn't care to know where she could have gone. Weeks later, she received an unexpected visit from a man who claimed to be the owner of her house. Ozioma could not believe her ears. "You must be joking. This house belongs to me," she said as the man showed her the house documents, which now had his name clearly written on it. He asked to see her own documents, and Ozioma in that moment realized that Ngozi never gave her the documents of the house. Ozioma's knees weakened as she flipped through the documents with trembling hands. Her name was nowhere to be found. Not on the land papers, not on the deed, not on a single page, as she stood there trying to articulate her thoughts. "This must be a mistake. Ngozi built this house for me," she said as the man adjusted his glasses calmly, revealing that he was now the new owner. Ozioma froze in complete shock as the man gave her 2 weeks to vacate the house. He walked out of the house, leaving Ozioma in complete shock. She did everything to reach Ngozi, whose numbers were no longer connecting. She drove straight to her house and found Ngozi back in the mansion as if nothing had happened. Ozioma stood there confused as she saw Ngozi walk out of the house with her sister Buchi, the same sister who distanced herself from Ngozi for all these years. What she did not know was that her evil had been exposed. That evening, as Ngozi was leaving Ozioma's house, she received a call from her sister Buchi, who asked to see her urgently. Ngozi went straight to her sister's restaurant and met her sister, who was so shocked to see that she was homeless. Buchi had a dream that her sister Ngozi, as well as her husband, were locked up in a hut surrounded by trash. It was like a refuse dump, and Buchi knew that something serious was happening to her sister. So she approached her pastor and told him the dream that she had. The pastor prayed with her and revealed that her sister was under a spiritual attack. He revealed that her sister's best friend was the one behind everything that was happening. The pastor revealed to Buchi that Ozioma was the one behind the attacks that she had so many years ago that made her distance herself from her sister. "Your sister is not the enemy," the pastor said slowly, revealing that the face that she saw in her dream so many years ago, attacking her spiritually, did not belong to her own sister. He revealed that her sister's best friend, the same one responsible for her sister's current predicament, was the one behind the attacks. "She wanted to keep you away from your sister, to make way for her to enjoy your sister's wealth. So she went diabolical and made you have dreams where your sister was trying to kill you on several occasions. This was a scare tactic to take you out of the picture," the pastor revealed as Buchi felt her entire heart skip. Then, like a dam, the memories began to return. The nightmares, the fear, the night she woke up screaming, soaked in sweat. She remembered everything. The night she found herself tied up in a dark room in her dream. Her hands were bound. Her legs could not move as the door creaked open. A woman walked in slowly. She had Ngozi's face, the same eyes, the same voice, but they were empty and cold. The woman lifted a knife and smiled as she tried to stab her in the heart. "My money," the woman said repeatedly in Ngozi's voice as Buchi jerked out of her sleep terrified. She woke up from her dream shaking, convinced that her sister was evil. That was the night she ran. That was the night she blocked her sister everywhere. The night she decided never to accept help from Ngozi again. Tears streamed down Buchi's face as the truth hit her like a rock, to realize that her sister was innocent. All this time, she whispered, "It wasn't Ngozi." The pastor shook his head. "It was her friend," he said firmly as Buchi collapsed into the chair. She cried like a child and decided to call her sister Ngozi, who was going through a lot of financial issues. They met that evening and Buchi told her sister everything that happened. Ngozi could not believe her ears. She could not believe how far Ozioma went just to leech on her. They visited the pastor, who prayed for Ngozi and freed her from the evil bondage that had held them bound. A few days later, all their documents were released. The restriction on their accounts were also released and Ngozi gained access to their house again. Her husband, who had been missing for all this time, resurfaced as he revealed how he mysteriously lost his memory. He was on a business trip in Lagos when it all happened. His car skidded off the road and hit a huge tree by the side of the road. By the time he woke up, he could not remember his name or where he had come from. He did not remember his wife, his wealth, or the fact that he owned the kind of life that many people prayed for. So, he wandered for a few minutes, confused, hungry and injured. until he collapsed near a small village on the outskirts of Lagos. That was where a poor family found him. A woman named Mama Shola, as well as her husband Kayode, a local carpenter, who took him in without asking questions. They cleaned his wounds, fed him and gave him a mat to sleep. They called him Brother Kunle because that was the name that they randomly gave to him. For months, he lived with them, fetching water, helped in their workshop, and ate from the same plate as their children. One evening, as they were playing a card game, he collapsed and fell to the floor unconscious. Minutes later, he woke up and realized that his memory had been restored. Ngozi, in that moment, realized how vile her friend was. She could not believe that for all these years, she wined and dined with the devil herself. From that day on, Ngozi cut Uzioma off completely. She ordered her security to bundle her out of the compound and warned her never to come close to her family again. Uzioma, who once sat like a queen, became homeless overnight, left to regret the evil that she had done with nowhere to turn. Ngozi reunited with her sister Buchi, and together they began to rebuild their lives with honesty, love, and prayer. When Ngozi's husband fully recovered and their wealth was restored, he did not forget the poor family who sheltered him in his darkest days. He bought them a house and gave them a better life. And so, the woman who chose kindness rose again, while the one who chose wickedness lost everything that she worked for. For in the end, evil may hide for a while, but it never escapes justice. The lesson to be learned from these stories is that not everyone who smiles with you loves you, and not every friend is sent to help you. Jealousy can hide behind kindness, and evil can wear the face of loyalty for years. Wealth, power, and generosity must be handled with wisdom, because blind trust can invite deep betrayal. This story also teaches that family bonds should never be easily broken by fear, lies, or manipulation, and that no matter how long evil operates in secret, the truth will always surface. In the end, kindness is rewarded, wickedness is exposed, and those who chose cruelty will eventually face the consequences of their own actions. I hope you enjoyed this story.